Another edition of Beat the Closing Number presented by TheLines.com. My name is Eli Herskovich. You can follow The Lines on Twitter at TheLinesUS, and you can follow our lead MLB analyst to my right, Mo Nuwwarah, at Mo Nuwwarah, just as it's spelled. On the screen, breaking down a short and sweet MLB slate for Monday, June 26th, with just the Twins and the Braves, two first-place teams. But before we get started, remember to give the video a thumbs up and ring the bell to get notifications whenever The Lines releases a new sports betting video on any sports betting market. But Mo, Atlanta's teamed up to as high as around minus 225 over at Caesars and BetMGM, cheapest number in the market as of this recording on Monday morning, minus 215 over at DraftKings. And the Twins' best number among all the nationwide sports books, which you can price shop all MLB odds over at thelines.com, is plus 190 with a total of about a consensus 8.5, maybe a juiced 8 towards the over out there as well. Spencer Strider with his 3.93 ERA, 3.10 FIP, so he hasn't outpitched his peripherals, taking on Sonny Gray, who his top two pitches, four-seamer and curveball, both rank in at least the 75th percentile when it comes to spin rate. His fastball actually ranks in the 97th percentile, so pretty elite in that regard. And this series actually just an appetizer for the Braves because they have the Marlins coming up for a 3-game series this weekend. Believe it or not, big 3-game set when it comes to the NL East standings, although Miami's still 6 games back as of today with a negative 15-run differential, yet 11 games over 500. But when it comes to one specific awards market, Luis Arraez, who was traded from the Twins to the Marlins this offseason as a part of the Pablo Lopez trade, is actually tied with Mookie Betts of the Dodgers for the fourth shortest NL MVP odds, with now dipping below a 400 batting average, sitting at 399 with a 407 weighted on base average and a ridiculously low 4.9% strikeout rate. And of course, Ronald Acuna Jr. of the Braves is the odds-on favorite to win NL MVP here in late June. So back to Twins Braves, Mo. How are you betting this game?
As I sit here in my Braves shirt, but I do have the Twins today. Yeah, Spencer Strider, like you said, not pitching in terms of his results, not as good as his peripherals. I don't expect that really to continue. I have him projected as one of the best pitchers in MLB, roughly 4 ERA notwithstanding. Don't think that's representative of his talent level. Actually, pitching better than ever in some senses. Chase rate pretty obscene this year, around 37%. So he's doing great. Minnesota does have some hope. 6th best versus sliders so far this year. Obviously, that's his primary out pitch. And while they have not been good against four-seam fastballs, I checked on how they've done against high heat. It's been horrible. But 298 xWOBA versus a 258 WOBA. So I think quite unlucky. So barely below average, actually, against 95 plus mile per hour fastballs. So I think they do have a fighting chance here. I think they're going to have Byron Buxton. He's in the projected lineup. He did appear yesterday. I was watching that game because I had the Twins yesterday. He did come in as a pinch hitter late in the game. So I think he's going to be able to DH here. Bad news is they still have Carlos Correa, who tried single-handedly to lose that game yesterday. But luckily, a Tiger's error prevented this from happening. But I don't think Sonny Gray is like that far behind Strider. He is not near as good as his ERA this year for sure. But he's still very good, and I hope he goes back to what he was doing early in the season, which is pitch out of the zone a lot more. That number's back up to like where his career averages are. So I hope he goes back to trying to get the Braves to chase, because they will definitely chase. One thing that I really like in this game for the Twins is the way the bullpen's set up. I know that seems crazy when you're talking Twins against Braves. Braves have a much, much more talented bullpen than the Twins, but the Braves really a couple close games last couple days, pulled out a couple tight ones against Cincy, 7-6, I believe, both games. They used Nick Anderson, Raisel Iglesias, and AJ Minter in all of those games, I believe. Or if they didn't, then I think maybe Minter just once, but he threw a lot of pitches. So I'm not sure any of those three are going to be available. They might have like the B squad, which is still like okay. It's like Jesse Chavez, Kirby Yates, these type of guys. Like they're not the worst, but I think the Twins might actually have the better bullpen, which is crazy to say. They will have Brock Stewart and Joan Duran available, I believe. So if this gets to the late innings and it's close, I'm actually feeling pretty good about Minnesota. Wasn't thinking I was going to bet this game, but the Braves got hit pretty hard this morning. Somebody with market influence really liked the Braves. So gonna fade this team here and take the Twins at a better number than was available this morning, which I thought the morning number was right.
And Mo, looking back at what happened when it comes to results over the weekend, Atlanta took 2 of 3 from the NL Central leading Cincinnati Reds. Like you mentioned, Minnesota winning Sunday and taking 2 of 3 from Detroit, I believe. But back to the Reds, they actually have the highest ticket percentage when it comes to percentage of bets to win the National League. And when we think about results over the weekend, I don't know if you necessarily agree with that. You probably don't. I for sure don't, if we're talking about NL contenders. But what were some of your bigger takeaways from the baseball weekend, and also when it came to your betting results?
It was a really good weekend for me, for sure. 2-0 yesterday. And I think a decent Friday and a decent Saturday as well. Yeah, I don't think the Reds have much of a shot, to be honest. I think that they do have a shot definitely to win their division, though. We've talked so many times about how bad the NL Central is. They're definitely looking as live as anybody over there. The bullpen has been better than expected for sure. And now the lineup is pretty good. Like, it was pretty bad like a month plus ago before. Then they brought up De La Cruz. They brought up McLean. Now they get Votto back, and he's smashing dingers every day already. So, I mean, the bottom of the lineup is like Joey Votto, Tyler Stevenson type of guy. Like, this is a good, like, very well-balanced lineup. They're definitely fun. Some casual baseball fans I know are definitely firing on the Reds, like, pretty much on the daily. So, good for them. You know, they're on a nice streak. I think the Braves are going to be really tough to beat in the NL. That's been kind of honestly what I've been thinking the last couple of weeks as the Dodgers have kind of fallen off and seen some of the vulnerabilities of the Diamondbacks as well. They get beat by the Giants this weekend. Yeah, I just don't think anyone's really that close to the Braves, to be honest, in the NL. I think the NL is looking pretty weak compared to the AL, but the Braves are as good as anybody in baseball, so I think they should probably roll through the NL.
You mentioned the results of one of the series from the NL West over the weekend with the Giants and the D-backs when it comes to an interdivision matchup. And San Francisco, with I want to say above a plus 40 run differential on the season. And when you look at that rotation with Webb, DeSclafani, Wood, Cobb, who his results, I think he's actually outpitching his peripherals after last season, or slightly outpitching his peripherals after last year. It was the opposite. So not necessarily a rotation you trust going into the postseason. DeSclafani lost yesterday, although only giving up 2 earned to Arizona, I believe. But do you hold any stock in when you think about an NL contender? I know I brought up maybe the Padres as opportunity to buy low, and then, of course, what happens over the weekend. I said that 2 weeks ago, and then they go on and I think lose 2 of 3 to the Nats, or they lost the last 2 games of that series. So Giants, do you hold any sort of value when it comes to maybe a bit of a long shot to win the National League? And maybe if you want to go a little bit further than that, I believe they're around plus 3,500 to win the World Series. I know when I was looking at World Series odds over the weekend, one team that stood out was the Toronto Blue Jays because their high point in the market is actually plus 2,500 over at FanDuel Sportsbook. And you could price shop those odds over at thelines.com. And we've brought up countless times why Toronto is set up to perform well in the playoffs. And right now they hold the third and final AL wildcard spot. But National League, looking at that league in particular, the Giants' best price is plus 3,500 over at Caesars. So anything there for you with San Francisco? Any reason to buy into the Giants?
I don't think like I would be running to the window to bet the Giants, but that being said, I do feel like the NL is pretty flat and wide open after the Braves. So all it takes is one upset. It doesn't have to be the Giants that beats them. I mean, we saw them lose against the Phillies last year, who they by far outperformed during the regular season. You know, that's how the baseball postseason goes sometimes. Yeah,
but wasn't Max Fried sick, or he was dealing with some ailment, right?
Yeah, I can't recall, and Philly had a good, obviously, top of the rotation. They're live against anybody and probably still live against anybody. The Alex Cobb is very good, so they have a very good top two with Alex Cobb in the rotation there. I think their bullpen has been shockingly good. One thing about the Giants, though, is like their defense is terrible. So I would expect that to bite them at some point, but we saw the Phillies with a terrible defense make it through last year. So, you never know in a small sample. I definitely think the Giants are live they have a good offense. Like they've had a really good offense all year, especially hitting right-handed pitching, I believe. But yeah, I think honestly, anybody could probably come out of the NL that makes the playoffs just because there's really one strong team, but they're not so strong that they're just unbeatable. It's definitely still live for somebody to beat the Braves, but the Giants, I guess, are as good of a candidate as anyone, to be honest. Camilo Doval has been leading the bullpen, and the Rogers brothers, it's been very good for them. So I would look out for them, and the market seems to have caught up to them, unfortunately. I mean, the Padres did have some success against them, I believe, last week. They had a nice run before that National Series, but yeah, the Giants seem to be pretty highly valued in the market at this point.
That is Mo Noir. You could follow him on Twitter at Mo Noir. You could follow the Lines on Twitter at The Lines US, and you can follow me on Twitter at Eli Herskovich. Thanks for watching and listening to another edition of Beat the Closing Number, presented by thelines.com. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of our baseball bets. So long, everybody.